Please welcome Ed Cooke.
Good. So, hello, everybody. It's a curious business being known as a memory man for a couple of reasons. First of all, whenever anyone gets to know this, they always volunteer the fact that they've got a terrible memory. In my previous life as a philosopher, when I told people that, no one ever said, like, I am an incredibly superficial person with, no interest in the deeper questions of life. But there's something about memory which elicits people's sort of concerns and their insecurities. And the other thing is that I am always asked to do a memory trick. Now, I don't particularly like doing memory tricks in public because it tends to give the wrong impression. It makes things seem a little bit mysterious. But when I discovered that Lily Cole was speaking, I came up with a cunning plan and offered to learn all 400 phone numbers of all the delegates. Anyway, David, with admirable disconcern for your privacy, did provide me with those numbers. But rather sadly, Lily Cole's number was not among them. So in my little moments of spare time over the last week, I've had a pretty miserable time of it, learning all your phone numbers. So I was actually just given the last 6 digits. So we'll see if anything's come of this. So if anyone doesn't mind, if anyone signed up to the conference with their phone number at least a week ago, and doesn't mind their privacy being invaded, could you put your hand up? Just 3 people, come on. Can we just get some enthusiasm up here? Okay, cool. So we've got some hands up. Leave your hands up for a second, because I'm going to ask you your surnames and see if I can remember your phone number. So, sir, what's your name?
Matthews.
You're Matthews. And is your phone number 006314?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Matthews. And that's probably the last one I get right. So I appreciate the applause, David. What's your surname? Your Peck. Well, there are actually 2 Pecks present. And you've only got a Matthews sitting next to you, so I hope that the course of the conference, your love interest hasn't abandoned you. But of the 2 Pecks present, one of them has the phone number 743522, and the other one has the phone number 217433. You were the first. You could have told me earlier. Great. Excellent. So I'll do a couple more. What's your... Chico, very good. Yes, I was wondering how that was pronounced. I didn't wonder about the number, though, which is 740817. Very good. Okay, one last one, and then we'll move on to more interesting things. Yes, sir. Vengo. You're not... how do you spell your name?
Engorovius.
Yes, so you're 481522. Okay, good. So, now, this I can tell you is a fairly pointless life skill, but it is quite interesting. So here's a picture of an audience. Do you notice anything interesting about this picture? Okay, so David Rowan is in the front row, and I'm going to give you an explanation of how I use principles of memory to learn phone numbers. So David Rowan, a handsome man, but perhaps not the easiest to remember. So to connect his name to what I already know, which is very important because all memories form a place in the constellation of your other memories, I connect David to something I know about David. So I think of David and Goliath with his sling, and Rowan, which sounds like rower. So I think of David the rower. And then David's number is 997082. And I have a particular system for numbers. So every 2-digit number becomes a person. And 99, for those of you who follow cricket, was the average of Donald Bradman when he retired. So first I imagined Donald Bradman. 1970, this is only my personal private system. It's just a way of turning numbers into images. I think of John Lennon, because that's when he wrote Imagine. And 82, I think of Margaret Thatcher in her pomp. And then I combine them together into a fused image of Donald Bradman playing the piano on this rowing boat to Margaret Thatcher. And what's interesting is what I end up remembering is the emotion. And the emotion there is that Margaret Thatcher probably wouldn't like that. And that is enough for me to go back through that kind of single emotion of a memory to the characters involved, to the numbers. And this may sound rather elaborate, but it's actually quite intuitive. Now, there's a second thing I do because there's a lot of you in the audience, and memories, when they're too similar, tend to interfere. And if you can imagine, I'm imagining that associated with David. Once you get sort of 400 other sets of images, you get an enormous amount of interference between memories. A bit like when you meet someone called Karen and Catherine and Corrine and Corina and Catherine with a C all at once at a house party. You begin to feel a little bit ill in your brain. Well, similarly, that kind of interference needs to be fought against. And so with memory techniques, what we do is we attach these memories into space, because space is a structure for memories which divides them up. And so I put David in the river, and then around London and around a few other places, I arranged a few other people. So there was David. There's Hojin Song, fantastic talk, thank you, Hojin. And I'm imagining Hojin Song singing a Trojan song. Here's Pablos Holman, who I think of as a whole man made of pebbles. Pablos Holman. And here's Mark Suppers. And you can see these green ones are in a line, so these are some of the presenters. And Mark Suppers, I imagine he marks his supper every evening, publish before eat. Okay, good. So 7 out of 10. Good. So there's a science of this, and the science is very interesting. The science involves tracking how memories deteriorate over time and the optimal moments for reminding yourself of something just before you're about to forget it so that it becomes strengthened. And there's a science of testing yourself, because when you recall a memory, that memory gets stronger. But the science is actually really rubbish, and it's quite pleasing that the art of memory, which was kind of perfected about 2,000 years ago, is still way, way, way ahead of the cognitive science. And hopefully over the next 50 years, cognitive science can bring us to a place where we can kind of go beyond the techniques of the ancient Greeks. Now, the art is partly because it uses lots of imagination, and it's a very creative thing. And it's partly because with memory techniques, you're basically arranging things in your mind. You're configuring images in your head, and this can be used not just for memory, but also for thinking, for perceiving the world differently, and for other fun things. It's basically a technology of the imagination, and while I would recommend to nobody, least of all myself in the future, learning 400 phone numbers, it is extremely fun to use these techniques to arrange thoughts, basically to change your perception of the world, because that's what a memory is. It's a persistent change in your mind. Now, this artwork, by the way, is a famous diagram of Napoleon going on his Russian campaign. It's an infographic, and it's a masterpiece by Minard. And basically, the size of the kind of cream line is the size of Napoleon's army going into Russia. And you can see it gets steadily smaller and smaller and smaller as all the soldiers die. And then at the far end, you have the retreat, and that's in black. And the army continues to dwindle until there's almost nothing left. And this is probably a pretty good reflection of what your memories are going to be like for this year's Wired when you come to next year's Wired. Certainly, those who were at Wired 2011 and who go back to Wired 2012 probably have only just a handful of recollections of what's happened. And so we're going to try and fight that by teaching you, in order, using a memory palace, all the speakers we've had so far today. It's going to be extremely good fun, and we're going to have to go really fast. So first thing to say is we're going to use the spaces around this building as parcels into which we're going to put the memory. So first here we're going to have redesigning the non-profit. We're going to leave some images here to help you remember that. Then the performance is going to be in the corridor over there. On the stairs we're going to have the unfinished social revolution, because that's where social revolutions often begin and don't come to completion, on stairwells. The friendly robot uprising is going to be in this peculiarly illuminated restroom scenario. The view from the lab is going to be in the lobby and the hallway. The future of the city out on the right. The creative edge on the other side of the building. And then hackers and makers are going to be here. And we're going to have to form images at speed, but you can have one image in your head per second, so it won't be a problem. So first, redesign the non-profit. We've got 3 speakers. The first was Scott Harrison. Now, Scott gave a brilliant talk, but he's not very memorable as a name. So what we're going to imagine is a Scottish hairy son. And if you just imagine a Scottish hairy son over there, that's going to be Scott Harrison. Jane Chen, similarly excellent delivery, but Jane Chen, the 2 words, very, very similar, a tiny bit difficult to pull into your imagination. So I'm going to get us to imagine a chain gang, Jane Chen. And if you imagine a chain gang here, that will help you remember Jane Chen. Our third speaker, Peter Thum, was a no-show and will be eliminated from our memory. Okay, so now onto the performance. So the performance was given by Imogen Heap, and if you don't know Imogen Heap, just imagine her on a heap, and we'll move straight on to the unfinished social revolution. Now, there were 2 speakers, Manal al-Sharif, and Sharif for me is etched into my mind from films of the 70s. It makes me think of Omar Sharif. And so Omar Sharif, Manal al-Sharif, And then the second speaker was Mona Eltahawy. Now, when you have a difficult name like Eltahawy, what tends to happen is your brain stops working and you kind of shrug away from it. And what you have to do to remember it is you have to break it apart into its components and then make a little story. So Eltahawy sounds a bit like yelled in a hallway. So Mona Eltahawy could be moaning and yelling in a hallway. Now, fortunately, we have a photo for that. So we're going to imagine Omar Sharif at the top of the stairs and Mona Eltahawy yelling in the hallway. So let's go back and forth. Eltahawy yelling in the hallway. Is anyone speaking over there? Okay, so Eltahawy yelling in the hallway. And then we're going to have Manal al-Sharif is portrayed by whom? Omar Sharif. Very good. Okay, we're going to carry on. So the friendly robot uprising, this is going to be good fun. Leimor Schweitzer. When he first introduced him to me, I was wondering if he was asking the following question. Lime or Schweitzer? So what we're going to imagine is a lime or a Swiss flag, a Schweitzer in the corridor there, and we're going to crack straight on. The view from the lab into two parts. First we had Sebastian Sung, actually quite an easy name to remember, but just so that we remember it had something to do with the word sung, we're going to imagine a songbird in his hands. And then Ramesh Raskar, which literally sounds like ramming a race car. So there we've got Sebastian Sung, and there we've got Ramesh Raskar. Okay, good. Now, the last, before we do a little bit of review, we had Todd Makeover. Now, Todd sounds like to do a little bit, spelled similarly. And makeover obviously sounds like makeover. So we're just going to imagine Todd's to-do list. Do word talk, have makeover. It's Toddu makeover, Todd makeover. Quite lame. This is a curious thing about this memory stuff, is it is like a relentless barrage of puns of dubious quality. But anyway, they work. Simon Baron-Cohen, by the way, incredibly distinguished scientist, but unfortunately nowhere near as memorable as his nephew Sacha Baron-Cohen. And so what we're going to do is we're going to imagine Todd's to-do list on the window there, and really try and imagine yourself seeing it there against the window. And then over here, we're going to imagine Sacha Baron-Cohen. Okay, quick review. Who was over here? The Scottish hairy son. And rather than just mumbling, which is, by the way, an excuse for your body for not recalling something, when you mumble, you sort of go mumble, mumble, because it gives you the illusion that you're saying the words, but doesn't put you through the pressure of actually saying them. So in future, when I ask you a question, if you could cease to mumble and instead say it very nice and loud, I'd really appreciate that. Okay, cool. So over here we had... Right, very good. We'll go for the image first. We had a Scottish hairy son, very good. And here we had a... And in the corridor there by the curtain, we had a heap, very good. And now we're going to go out the door and go around here, and we're going to go to the future of the city. There's going to be 3 people here, and we're going to do the mnemonics at speed. So for the first person is Alyssa Walker, who talks about walking in cities, and Alyssa is quite lissom. So in a curious case of nominative determinism, she has obviously decided to study that. And so Alyssa Walker, so you think of Alyssa Walker coming out from here. Then Paola Antonelli, who sounds like, that's the newest thing I could come up with, power antlers. Just imagine her, actually, much easier. And then in the corner we got Jake Barton, which sounds a bit like fake bartender. Okay, so going over those then, we're going to go right through. So in number 1 position, what's the name of the man? Very good. And then in the number 2 position, we've got Jane Chen. Good, very good. And then the top corridor for the performance, we've got... Very good. And then Imogen Heap. And then at the top of the stairs, we've got Manal Sharif. Good. Quickly followed by... It's good to see that reading is just as effective as remembering. And then in the corridor, we have... Leimor Schweitzer, good. And then in the cloakroom on the left-hand side, we've got... Very good. You've sort of forgotten that one. It's Sebastian Sung. He's got a songbird. And then on the second one, we have Ramesh Raskar. Okay, good. Then we've got the to-do list for the makeover. And then finally, we've got... Very good. Simon Baron-Cohen. Okay, good. Then we've got Alyssa Walker. She comes out, encounters a stag with powerful antlers. That's Paola Antonelli. And in the corner, we've got Jake Barton, our fake bartender. Okay, so we're going to move across here and then go to the creative edge. And in the creative edge, we're going to have two people to begin with, one, two. The first one's name is Diego Stucco. Now, the only Diego I know is Diego Maradona, who's obviously stocky. So for Diego Stucco, we've actually got a very convenient thing. So they just think of stocky Diego, Diego Stucco. Stocky Diego, Diego Stucco. Stocky Diego, good. Okay, so we're going to have him in the window there. So really try and envision it, because it's an act of imagination to learn these things. And then up here, we've got a levitating van that's yellow, which is Levi Van Velu. He's a conceptual artist, so I think we can forgive ourselves for that image. Then we met Jennifer and Shruti. Jennifer is generous. She gave Shruti a tea, and Shruti loves Shruti, so she put shrew in the tea. Okay, so Jennifer and Shruti. And then we had Lichtfaktor, who was super cool, and we'll just imagine some of their work there. Finally, we've got the hackers and makers. That's what happens when you do too many memory techniques. Your brain goes slightly odd. Hackers and makers. And we've got Pablis Holman on the left of the doorway. Think of a pebble-made whole man. In the middle, we've got Sojun Song. So we can imagine him singing a Trojan song. Does anyone know what a Trojan song sounds like? Hojun, would you... Okay. And then finally we've got Mark Suppers, who's obviously the guy who marks his supper. And really try and imagine, really try and vividly envisage this situation as you peer out of the gates of Wired after the 6:30 much delayed talk is finally finished. And imagine seeing on your left, who's going to be on your left? It's going to be Pablos Holman. In front of you, the guy singing, what's he singing? A Trojan song. And then to your right, Mark Suppers. Good. So this is a moment for an anecdote. I don't think we have time. Okay, so a quick review of where we are. We've got Alyssa Walker, Paola Antonelli, Jake Barton. Ask yourself the question. We've got Diego Stucco. We've got Levi Van Velu, the levitating van that's yellow. We've got Jennifer, who's generous. We've got Shruti, who likes shrew tea. And then we've got Lichtfaktor. And then we've got Pablis Holman, Hujin Song, and Mark Suppers. So now we are going to do the mega test. And we're going to see if you can remember all of the speakers from today, all 25 of us, at Wired 2012, all at once. And to energize yourself, I'm just going to ask you all to stand up. Very good. I was going to say sit down again, but actually this is quite... you look so energetic now that we might go through it. Okay, so in the number one position, and go for the name rather than the image, and really shout it out. There's no shame in getting things wrong. In fact, it'll just alert your confabulating mind to the fact that you don't know, and that way you'll be able to correct the memory. So really shout out the answers. In position number one, we had Scott Harrison. Good. And in position number two, we had... Very good. And position number three was a... You've forgotten that one. Good. Eliminate him from your memory. He was a no-show. And in position number one in the performance sector, we had... Very good. And then at the top of the stairs, we had... Very good. And in the middle of the stairs, we had... Very good. Mona El Tahori. Good. And then in the sort of gents' toilets, we had... Very good. Limo Schweitzer. And then in position number one among the scientists, we had... Excellent. And in position number two, we had... Ramesh Raskar. Very good. And then in position number three, we had... Todd McEwer. Good. And position number four, we had... Very good. And now going backwards now, because you can do that. In position number three, we had... Right. Some of you are going fake bartender. Good. Well, that's fine. That happens. Fake bartender's Jake Barton, in case you meet him later this evening. In position number two, with her powerful antlers, we had... And position number one, strolling out, was... Superb. Oops. In the window, we have... Very good. And poking out of the wall, apologies, Levy, we have... Excellent. And then here, in positions number 3 and 4, in the creative edge, 3 was Jennifer, very good. Jennifer. And then 4 was Shruti, very good. And number 5 was Lichtfaktor, the German graffiti artists. And then finally, in position number 1 among the hackers and makers, we had... Exactly, Pablis Holman. And number 2, we had... Hojin Song. And just imagine Hojin Song rocketing up to space to make it even more semantic. And then in position number 3, last of all, we had... Okay, excellent. You may now sit down. Okay, good. So very quickly, memory is often placed in opposition to technology. I think that that's a kind of curious way of thinking about things, and actually that technology offers us potentially enormous benefits to how efficiently and how playfully we can put memories into our minds. And so you're going to have to forgive a brief plug. I'm going to talk about Memrise, our website. So in Memrise, what we're trying to do is we're trying to combine everything which is known from the art and science of memory, basically to kind of turn learning into a recreational sport, where you just sort of look at images, click on buttons, and learn really fast. And this is what happens when you're not kind of using an efficient tool for learning. You actually learn if you're learning vocabulary at a rate of 6 words per hour, and that's been shown in quite a number of things. And that's actually 1 word every 600 seconds. And can you imagine the gaping space in someone's mind as only 1 word lands there in the course of 600 seconds? It's very disappointing. Or as we say in French, décevant. Anyway, what we're trying to do is crowdsource people's imaginations so that whenever you're learning anything, there's an amusing way of doing so. Here's a recent mnemonic from Memrise, from our community, written by a girl called Tallulah, who lives in South London. El Polvo is a one-night stand, and she points out that it was only a polvo because he drove a Volvo. Polvo. And 4,000 people have learned the word polvo using Tallulah's ingenious wit. And it's quite a cool thing. And so, what we see is people learn a kind of 30 words an hour when you get the reminders right, the tests right, and you make it pretty fun. So it's all pretty good fun. And there's another dimension to Memrise, which is that it's all crowdsourced. And we're going kind of beyond language now. And it's quite fun, the things people choose to learn, like chess openings, basic Icelandic, Pokemon Generation 1. That's a huge course. Flags, all sorts of extraordinary nonsense. Hobo symbols are quite popular. So we're just about to launch out of beta later this month. And so if you want to get on the rocket ship of Memrise, you can send an email to wired2012@memrise.com. We'll put you on the invite list. But finally, I just want to conclude with 3 thoughts, one of which is that memory goes right through your mind and is much more than just remembering facts and phone numbers. It really is the contours of your mind, at the kind of basis of your thought and your perception and your imagination. The second thing is that it's highly creative. This concept we have of memory as being this kind of dull storehouse from which we extract information really doesn't fit how it works and how it works best. And the third thing is that before you go to sleep tonight, go through this memory palace again, and then you'll remember it in the morning. And then in a week's time, go through it again, and then you'll remember it in a month's time. And then in a month's time, go through it once more in your imagination. And what you'll find is that you'll bump into people like Ho Jin Song's name over the course of the year. You'll remember who he is. You'll have a place to attach new thoughts. And it should lead you to noticing what you've learned today more often, just generally in the outside world. Thank you very much.